We are.
Excellent. Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to everybody who has registered and attended today. First of all, apologies that we had to postpone from 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, Ami broke her ankle falling down. Where were you climbing? What was it?
Pennygent, one of the Yorkshire Three Peaks.
Okay. And she was stretchered off and it looked horrific. So I hope you're okay. I think you're still in a boot. So thank you so much for joining our webinar today. Those of you that don't know me, some of you know me as Barbara, but actually I prefer Basia. It's my Polish name, which is, I think, was probably appearing on my Zoom title. I'm Barbara Kolosinska. I'm MD from C&M Travel Recruitment. C&M are the leading travel recruitment agency. We are 25 years old. I started when I was 4, and we recruit for all sectors, all levels, all disciplines within the travel industry, all having worked in the sector. I mean, my team and I, so we probably have more than 300 to 400 years of travel industry recruitment experience between us. Joining me today, also, those of you, the reason we've decided to do the webinar today is over the pandemic, Ami, myself and Claire, ABC, which we only just worked out about a month ago, the ABC of everything travel recruitment, HR and law. We did a lot of these during the pandemic, and we covered anything from employment law to going to fully remote, to contracts, to the workforce, etc. And it's been about 18 months since we did the last one, and we got together a few weeks ago. We just thought, I think it would be a wise time to do this kind of thing again. It's wonderful when we all attend functions and events, and Travel Weekly had their fantastic People Summit on Thursday, which we won't be covering exactly what was covered on Thursday. Ami, unfortunately, wasn't there anyway. But I think it's important that the topics that the three of us cover are discussed at length. And we want this to be a really interactive session, ladies and gentlemen, in the audience. So, and again, any newcomers, if you can put your cameras on, that's great, so we can see your faces. So please feel free. I have got a couple of questions that have already been pre-submitted, which is superb, but please feel free to add any questions into the chat, which I'm sure we'll cover anyway. So that is me, and that is what we do. So I'd like to introduce my wonderful friends and esteemed panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves. Over to you, Ami.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Apologies again for having this event postponed a couple of weeks ago. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a partner at Travlaw. I specialise in employment law and have done for the last 25 years ago. I started when I was 3, actually. For those of you who don't know much about Travlaw, it's a niche law firm, and all we do is act for the travel industry. So it's a one-stop shop, basically. And as I said at the outset, I specialise in employment law. So it's really from recruitment, onboarding staff, to exit, tribunals, policies, procedures, redundancies, reorganisation, anything you would name it in terms of employment law, I do. Claire.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I can't believe it's been 18 months. It feels like only a few weeks ago since we last did one of these. It's mad. But obviously a lot's changed, and I will be discussing that. So yes, I'm Claire Steiner. I am an HR professional. I have 30 plus years of HR experience, over 25 of which have been predominantly in the travel and tourism industry. And I also work a lot with talent as well, particularly new talent. And I do that through my work with the Future You Foundation, which I co-founded 15 years ago, and the Global Travel and Tourism Partnership, which is a multi-country educational charity introducing young people around the world to the wonderful world of travel and tourism and its careers. So that's me.
And Claire and I also sit on the board of the Institute of Travel and Tourism together as well. Thank you, ladies. So the main 3 subjects we're going to be talking about today are flexible working, well-being in the workplace, which is extremely apt for today, being International Mental Health Day, and AI and how that impacts recruitment, etc. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of where we are from 18 months ago. Sorry, I have written down some stats because I can't remember them all. Market in recruitment is still extremely candidate driven. There's still a lot of recruitment going on. From last year, which was a phenomenal year from our perspective as a business because of the pent-up demand from the previous years, because of the pandemic. It was so vacancy high, candidate low. Parity was huge, huge, huge. Great for us, not so great for our business partners and our clients, many of whom you guys are out there as well. This year, we have found the gap to be reducing somewhat, i.e. vacancies are coming down and candidate numbers and registrations are going up, which I'm not over concerned about. It means we can, rather than firefighting and spinning plates and being reactive, which is what we were doing last year. My team they were burnt out last year filling all those roles. It was mayhem, but it also meant that the quality of the recruitment process, we were literally like this. We were spinning plates. So this year, definitely vacancies are slightly down, especially in the TMC sector, and I believe we do have some TMCs listening today. A lot of that is, I know that a lot of the TMCs cut deep last year during the pandemic, really, really deep, 80% down on workforce. Last year had to build up, which they did, the big TMCs, the smaller ones, etc. But this year started with aggressive business plans and budgets, Q1 and Q2, to recoup the unfortunate losses that were made. Started off well. This is what we're being told from our TMC. Started off well, and the business travel has sort of gone a bit quieter, which has a direct impact on recruitment. As busy as all of you are out there is as busy as we are. So that's what we're finding. We're finding registrations are up, which is great. There was a lot of caution, a lot of lack of confidence from talent that we lost from the travel industry, or that were on furlough or made redundant. They didn't want to come back. So people are coming back. So candidate numbers are up from last year, year to date, January to August, September, up by 14% from 2022, which is great. And from pre-pandemic, up by 25%, the registration numbers. That's a really positive sign. Salaries are always also up. You might see that we do post monthly salary surveys, which gives an idea of this. This is the salaries that we get on all the roles, and also the candidates that register with us. They're also up from this time last year, year to date, up by 12.7%, and from pre-pandemic, up by 18%. And that's across the board. That's from not necessarily entry level, but res consultants, leisure and BT, all the way up to senior roles. So that's a really, really positive sign. Vacancy numbers are down year on year by 27%. Again, it seems like a big percentage, but we had so many roles, it was crazy, and only 10% down from 2019. So if vacancies are down and candidates are up, this is a good sign for you guys out there that are looking for staff. It's always going to be candidate driven. What we're also finding is candidates are very fussy. Being a candidate-driven market, they can request anything from the flexible working, which we're going to talk about next, to hybrid, to the wellbeing policies, to the benefits, and so on. And the ones that we are finding are successful, the hirers, are the ones that are making quick decisions, that can be flexible on things like salaries and benefits, that have got a fantastic employer brand. So if you have a great brand out there, not necessarily how you advertise your vacancies, but how you promote yourselves, the personality that you give your businesses, they're the clients and they're the companies that will attract and get the best people. Unfortunately, we're also finding there's a lot of turn downs happening. And we don't get a lot of turn downs or dropouts. It's less than 5% usually in the normal world. It's between 10 to 15% at the moment. So people are turning jobs down, and that is because they get an offer from one company, either via us or directly, or via another agency, and then they get counter offered by their existing employer or by another job that they're out there. So it's very challenging. We don't like it to happen, but just be aware that it is happening, because candidates are expecting a lot. I mentioned the salary, and I appreciate that some of you are smaller companies, but smaller companies don't necessarily have the budget to throw money. But it's not just about that. It's your wellbeing policies. It's things like sustainability, your D&I. All of that is what candidates are looking for. I've got a very good example of a candidate, which I did say at the summit last week, is we had a candidate who had 2 offers, both of our clients, fantastic organisations. The candidate was offered both companies, turned one company down to go for the other company because their sustainability strategy was significantly better. So the baby boomers, actually much before that, the Gen Z, they're Gen A now, actually. What's the new Gen?
Gen Z, the Zillennials, and at the moment we're still
Zillennials.
The Alphas are about to come in.
This is what they want.
Yeah.
So that's enough from me. So let's kick off. Let's kick off with flexible working, shall we? We're going to start with a poll. We have a poll here. Let me get my where are the polls? The first question we're going to ask you is on the flexible. There we go. Just how many? There we go. How many of you would like more of your workforce to be spending time in the office? It's a simple yes or no. Have you got the poll up there?
Yeah, it's going.
Yeah.
Can you see it, ladies? Can you see the results?
Yeah. Ooh,
so would you like more of your first book to spend time in the office? Okay. Yes, no. Okay, we'll keep it at that. So 40% yes and 60% no, yeah? So more of you don't necessarily want people to be based in the office. Well, I'm going to end that poll. Thank you very much for participating. So there's going to be some audience participation. So let's kick off. Flexible working. Let's crack on with you, Claire.
Oh, blimey, okay. Well, I mean, I was actually going to say probably it's worth Ami talking about some of the changes that have been to the right.
Let's go with that then.
Working class. So yeah.
I mean, I think those figures are quite interesting, really, because I thought there might be a bit of a tip the other way. Because certainly that's what I'm hearing from a lot of employers, that the novelty of working from home has worn off a little bit. It's not really working. But focusing on flexible working, I think you're absolutely right, Basha, in what you said, is that you have to be an employer of choice. And if you simply don't entertain any sort of flexible working, you know, the candidate rather, is going to choose your competitor. It's something that is commonplace now. It was accelerated by the pandemic. And I think it's important to remember that when we talk about flexible working, it's not just solely working in the office or working at home. It can be different work hours, it can be condensed hours, it can be job sharing. Flexible working can take a whole host of different avenues. The government have recognised that there is a place for flexible working in the workforce, and also there's been an increased appetite over the pandemic. So there has been changes that have already received royal assent to flexible working. Those are likely to come in, I would say, probably sometime next year. It normally takes about a year after receiving royal assent before.
What does that mean, Ami?
It's basically got approval to steamroll ahead in very lay language, okay? Right. But when it actually becomes law, that's when we need to be not concerned, but implementing it. But I think a lot of employers are already ahead of the game. So essentially, the changes that are going to happen are going to make flexible working applications quicker, more of them, and easier. And what I mean by that is, at the moment, an employee can only make a request once every 12 months. They're now going to be able to make more requests because they can make it twice a year. Okay. Previously, the employer had up to 3 months to make a decision. And that's now going to be reduced down to 2 months, so the employer has to come back quicker with a decision. And also, previously, employees had to say or consider what the impact of their flexible working request was going to be on the workplace. They no longer have to do that, so it's much easier for flexible working applications to be made.
Okay.
One thing that really hit the headlines, but hasn't been implemented and is unlikely to be implemented anytime soon, was at the moment you have to have 26 weeks, 6 months service before you can make an application, flexible working. There was talk of that becoming a day one right. Basically, as soon as you're employed, you can make a flexible working request. That hasn't been implemented, although there is talk of that in the future, so that's one to keep an eye out on. So I think
that doesn't impact, of course, people that come in immediately in a hybrid, flexible working or remote role, though, does it? That's just people that are currently employed, yeah?
Well, if you're people who are currently employed, they have to have 26 weeks service at the moment. Okay, there was talk of that being a day one, right? So say one of your candidates gets a new job, right? Okay, unless the employer's already got a flexible working policy which they entertain from day one of service, they will have to wait 6 months before they can make an application to amend their working pattern, unless they've already negotiated it as part of the offer and the onboarding. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And we actually do have a question. All new newcomers that have just arrived, and I see Juliet, thank you, you're here from Travel Weekly. I did give you a shout out earlier. Any newcomers, please put any questions into the chat, and please put your cameras on if we can see you. Yeah, there's a question here, Ami, from Libby Payton. Doesn't that mean it would be easier to turn down if no need for business justification?
No, essentially there are 8 prescribed statutory reasons that you can rely on as an employer to turn down an application for flexible working. Those 8 reasons are not changing, they still remain. Off the top of my head, they are things like insufficiency of work at the time that the person is requested to work, inability to reorganise staff, impact on performance, impact on quality. So the employer still has to go through that thought process and justify why they are turning down the application. And I think the important thing to always remember is just because someone's got a right to request to work flexibly doesn't mean they have the right to work flexibly, and because the employer can turn that request down subject to them using one of the 8 or more justification reasons for knocking it back.
Would you be able to put those 8 reasons down?
Yes.
And when we send out the recording, perhaps we could, hopefully that would be of use to everybody. I know I find that useful.
Absolutely, yeah, I will.
Lovely, thank you. I know from my perspective, before we move on to you, Claire, personally at C&M, we are fully remote. We closed all our offices during the pandemic. Great for our work-life balance. We are all more mature as well, so we don't necessarily need to be in an office for the bars, the social life, and so on. However, I personally think this could have an impact in the future for onboarding new staff and younger members. I remember when I started at C&M, I was in my 20s, I was in the city, I like going out every night, going for drinks and so on and so forth. And we're also finding some of our candidates are now asking for, a few more are now asking they'd like to be in the office somewhat, but we've still got a much more high percentage of people wanting remote or fully or hybrid. And our clients, it's a real mixture. But I'd say the majority are probably remote or hybrid. Over to you. Oh, sorry, Ami.
Sorry, the thing to think about flexible working is, yes, it's an attraction tool for new candidates because pretty much most employers offer some sort of flexible working. It's also a retention tool for existing staff. But also you've got to think about, I had a question that I was asked by a client the other day about someone returning from mat leave, is a manager in marketing, wants to go fully remote.
It's not possible.
Yeah, exactly. And they've offered her a compromise, but she's still not happy with it. And that's the point that I was making, that whilst they've got the right to request it, they haven't got the right to work it, because it needs a contractual variation.
And it's not going to work in certain environments, is it? It's not going to work if you're running tour guides or people at the airport or an airline or
exactly.
res.
I think there's, you have to remember the expectations there, and I think people will go into certain jobs knowing that is a full-time face-to-face role, for instance. I think there are a number of things that you also need to consider here. For instance, at the moment and for the foreseeable future, we have 4 generations of people in the workplace, and they will all have different wants and needs. You mentioned about the fact that you were, more mature in terms of your staff, Basha, and so therefore, that you feel the remote working is better for you. And you made the point about younger people wanting that kind of the social interaction that you only get in the workplace, and that's absolutely true. But actually, this industry attracts people from all different generations as well, and those new people will need integration into the business. And how you do that is tough if you are working fully remotely. So So you have to really think that through. And unfortunately, you know, we're at the situation, and this is tough for HR teams, is one size does not fit all. And you have to look at everything on an individual basis.
So age, culture, location.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And that combines with all the other things we've talked about already. So, you know, on the DEI equation and things like that, you know, we also have, obviously, we always traditionally have had a higher percentage of females in our workforce, particularly at that kind of, that slightly, unfortunately, still that more sort of junior level. And a lot of the females still take the larger lion's share of caring responsibilities. So I think employers can be clever in this. So I will talk about hidden talent, and there's all these areas of hidden talent that we don't traditionally look for. And this is where DEI comes into play, and where we often miss a trick as employers in going out and finding these people. But those people in particular will have very unique needs when it comes to flexible working patterns. So actually, you need to kind of be able to have a business justification in your head as well, in terms of how you can justify giving different people different flexibilities. We all know we have to treat everybody equally. We have to be reasonable in our approach, but we have to also be able to demonstrate the business needs. So there's lots of different things that we need to consider when we're in there. But what I would say is I think flexibility is one of, if not the number one thing that candidates are looking for when they come into the workplace. As Ami said, that doesn't necessarily mean hybrid working. It means they want to be able to work when they want to work. So gone are the days of 9 till 5. Monday to Friday. And some people want that, some people don't, but you have to work out what model can work for your business, and whether that can be a combination of all of those things for what different people want.
I think that's it fundamentally. Sorry, Ami.
I was just going to add on to the point that Claire made, that when you're making going through your thought process and considerations as to whether it's going to be yes or a no, I've put up the reasons, the statutory reasons. I'm sorry, the bullets have gone missing. You
put that on the chat, didn't you?
Yes, I put it on the chat. They're the statutory reasons. You've also got to be mindful of discrimination, because if you're saying to all the men, for example, yeah, you can work from home, but women, because you're going to be looking after your kids, you know, you've got to be open to, am I creating a potential issue that doesn't need to exist here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as I mean, you know, we went through this a lot during the pandemic. We talked about it a lot in our sessions then. You know, these days it is about output. It's about whether or not they do the job, and not presenteeism. And so it's not about micromanaging from a distance either. You know, and employers now can't say, well, if I can't see them, then they're not working, because we've had 2 years of us all working remotely. So again, it's about how you manage them remotely as well, will be how effective your flexible working policy are, and you know, things like, you know, aligned KPIs and all that sort of stuff that is. But what I would say, and you mentioned, and you know, it's a big thing of mine, and I speak about it a lot, about the employer branding. You know, you as a business need to really utilize all the things that you have to attract new staff, and flexibility is absolutely 100%, unless it's not. And let's not forget, there are real businesses that cannot offer flexible working. But if you go to that business knowing that that is it, then you're aware of it.
Absolutely. And I think there's probably going to be many types of employers and companies that are sitting here today, and it's going to work for some and it's not going to work for others. But I think that's an interesting percentage split ratio, 60-40, that means actually not everybody necessarily wants their people back the whole time. But what's going to happen in the future? Who knows? We're fully remote, and I said it does not concern me, but it's on my mind about the future. But what we do is it doesn't stop the team integration. Obviously we have teams, we speak all the time, we also meet. So I hire an office in London and Manchester probably every 6 weeks or so, just to work. We don't have a big meeting, we just work, and it's just to be together, and that's really, really important. I have to say the productivity isn't as high as when we're at home, because we're catching up, but there's much more subliminal, holistic benefits of having that as well. The other thing I think also is the home working. If you have got that flexibility and option for your newbies and your newcomers, is if they are very new to the industry and they're very young, is we need to develop this talent to be great at networking, to have very good interpersonal skills, especially if they're salespeople on the road, whatever. That's my background, you know. That's how I started in the industry, and that does concern me if they are not with their teams as much as they were pre-pandemic is how are their interpersonal skills going to be developed? So it's a dichotomy, isn't it, really?
It is.
So,
and actually, I mean, I know we're going to talk a bit more about mental health, but, you know, during the pandemic, you had an awful lot of young people who literally were sitting behind a screen doing their university and college work. And they're now coming out into industry, and they're struggling with that social interaction because they literally have been used to that whole development taking place on screen. So again, there's an awareness of employers of how we deal with that. And you're quite right. These are key skills. The work I do with Future You, with the GTP, we go out, we talk to them about this face to face, but you can really get a sense of young people. Some are just not confident yet in getting out there, but you know they've got potential. So again, I think, you know, when we talk about recruitment, and a lot of people say, I want someone who can do that job. Well, actually, don't you want someone who can do more than that job? Don't you want someone who can develop, you know? So again, you need to kind of see beyond that as well. That's my personal opinion. I mean, there are some roles you just need people to go in and do, but again, it's trying to see past what and look at their potential. And I think, you know, and I know that I'm teaching a lot of most of you guys out there to suck eggs, but you know, we really need to understand the other nuances and challenges that this generation have. And actually, to be fair, not just these younger generation coming into the workforce for the first time. A lot of people became very introverted and have struggled to get back out there and to be sociable and networking. I mean, you know, Basha, you, me, Ami, we love getting out there, but actually, I found it tough at the beginning to think, oh, do I really want to get on a train and go to London for a meeting when I could just do it online? But actually, the more I did it, the more I got back into it. But it's, you know, it's just getting through that again.
Well, that brings us nice segue onto wellbeing, and I've noticed quite a few new people have joined us, so thank you and welcome to all of you newbies. If we can have your cameras on, that'd be wonderful, and if you'd like to put any chats or questions into the chat box at the bottom, please do. We have another poll for you, a little bit more audience interaction and participation. I'm not going to show those results. Go back to this poll. Okay, well-being in the workplace. Can you see that?
I've still got return to the office.
Oh, let me launch that.
Sure, might just be me though.
Got that? Is your company incorporating wellbeing initiatives into your workplace?
No. Has anyone else got that?
Let me try again.
Oh, here we go.
There we go. Sorry, technical problem. There we go. Is your company incorporating wellbeing initiatives into your workplace? Again, perfect timing being International Mental Health Day, but that's just one aspect of wellbeing. Yes. Oh, that's really, really positive, isn't it? Look at that, 88%.
Really good to see.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be specific structured policies. It can be all sorts of different things. It doesn't matter if you're the largest of corporates to the smallest of organizations, which we're going to talk about in a sec. So yeah, 85% versus 15. That's really, really, really positive and great to see. So as we know, well-being and everything associated has a huge impact on productivity. So that's things like your mental health. If that's in a good place, your physical health's in a good place. Those of you that know me know that I'm a big advocate of physical health and mental health being intrinsically linked, and that has a direct correlation on productivity, efficiency, happiness, cortisol levels, etc. At C&M, before we talk about well-being from a contractual point of view, we're a small business, less than 20 people now, but we took one of our clients, they do well-being days for their staff. They do 2 well-being days a year, and we are, we like that. So as well as all the huge holidays, Owen, is that right? That we give everybody and their birthdays off, which is another little Brucey bonus we give them. We just give them 2 wellbeing days a year, and with that I want them to go and spend time on themselves. I don't want them to work on themselves. Most of the girls go to a spa, most of the boys play golf. Give them a couple of £100 to do it, and it has been received so well. It doesn't cost a lot. It's a day out of the office, and the impact that has on their morale and their self-esteem and their mental well-being, we're all in stressful jobs, is huge. So I took that from one of our clients and it's worked really, really well. So well-being.
Yeah, there are some great things out there, and you know, obviously I've had benefit of working with a number of different clients. So again, you know, absolutely, if I think something works well, I'm going to introduce it and suggest it to other people. Mental health days are brilliant, and I think, you know, if you're in a position where you can give them a bit of money to spend on themselves, great. But a lot of companies can't afford to do that. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't still give them that 1 or 2 days off a year. You know, there was a whole thing around duvet days, wasn't there? And essentially, it's kind of what it is. But I was talking to a client recently, and they were like, oh, you know, I said, part of me also thinks, you know, because they know they've got this day, when they do wake up on that Monday morning feeling a bit like that, they go, yeah, but I don't want to actually lose my day. I want to save that for another day. So actually, I think it'll be more encouraging. I think there's that behind it. I think we also need to talk about, you talked about physical well-being to help with that. I would also say 2 other things you need to think about. We mentioned it just now. Social well-being, so people who are connected. You know, we've learned and we've seen an awful lot of terrible stories that have happened because of isolation and loneliness. So there's social well-being as well, which is
we know of lives that have been taken. So it's
and I know, and also financial well-being, you know. So I think that's another thing to think about. We are in the middle of a cost of living in crisis. It's great to hear that salaries are increasing. Basha, you mentioned that earlier. But a lot of people are struggling out there, and you need to be there to help them. It could just be as much as giving them an independent financial advisor or helping them with budgeting. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are struggling. Rents are going up, mortgages are going up. People are really having a tough time, and that will have a massive impact on their mental health and also their productivity, because when you're worrying so much about that, you know, it can be slightly all-encompassing. So I would say, and
it also impacts their colleagues. You know, if they're in a negative spiral, it's just, and they could be the best salesperson, the best product person, marketing, but if they're in that negative spiral, the knock-on effect it has to the team it can be damaging to any business, can't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big push for me. I think financial well-being, you know, no matter how well you think you're paying your staff, you don't know what their personal circumstances necessarily are. So, you know, do have a think about that and offering some help with that and just checking that. Other things that I'm seeing that people are consider actually help is also things like you mentioned, you know, birthdays off, but also volunteering days as well, where people can actually give a sense of giving back or supporting their favorite charity.
Charity days, we do that as well.
Whatever you want to do, going in. I'd love it. Come and work with Future You and come and talk at your local school or college about jobs in the industry. You know, those are all stuff that, and if you're supported by a company, that's something again that gives people a sense of purpose as well, and something outside of work. The
feel-good factor of giving something back. We call it charity days, but it can't, you know, I've got one of my girls in the north who volunteered for, I think, the school fete or something, had to make cakes all day. I ran an ultra marathon in July. Did I mention that? And I did it for charity. So two of my long training days were for that. But the feel good factor of that giving back and the knock-on effect it has, I believe, is huge. And that's just sort of, that's a selfless thing, isn't it, Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does make people feel good. You know, but I think so there's not one size fits all. It's going to be whatever works best for your business. It can really help with your corporate social responsibility as well, and that aspect of it, which helps attract the staff. So there's that whole kind of like ongoing thing. But
that is what candidates are looking for as well.
Yeah, I mean,
the big CSR.
A lot of the bigger companies and the sort of slightly bigger SMEs are putting things like mental health first aiders in place. But again, some people might not have the staff to do that or the ability to do that. If you can't, there are still things that you can offer. So again, it's giving staff access to employee assistance programs and things like that. Some of them you can get for free. There's some really great things online. You know, I always talk about Mind, the charity Mind has got some fantastic resources that people.
That's Peninsula's one of those, aren't they?
Peninsula is an HR sort of well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people on it. It's you sort of a monthly, you know, you get a Peninsula prescription.
We get that, and I know many of our clients do as well. But the team also get, be it sort of mental health counselling, but also financial counselling, etc., or support.
So there are many other people out there who do these kind of benefits packages. Right. So you know, Perk Box is another one that a lot of people use. And so I think, you know, that again, some of these are very small amounts of money. which actually are a genuinely great benefit. And I think particularly around things like this counselling and financial planning. So again, you know, if you have a think about that, you know, we're coming up into that planning for next year's budget. So HR people, you know, we know how to get in front of those finance people by telling them what's going to happen if they don't do it and the potential costs to the business. So I think do all of that. Sorry, Ami.
Sorry, I know you're passionate about this. I think employers have to be competitive with each other to attract the talent. And, you know, when you talk about mental health and well-being in the workplace, you know, half the time the employer's got their eye on the business effectively, and they don't actually see what the knock-on effect will be if they have staff going off on long-term sick leave or short intermittent absences. And it doesn't have to cost the earth. You can do small things, salary sacrifice, so they can donate to a charity. We've got fish in our office. Some of you may know that already, but the staff love it because it lowers their blood pressure.
It's calming, isn't it?
Yeah, calming. Yeah.
They always have them in dentist offices.
Yeah. And people used to bring their dogs in as well.
Fruit deliveries, you know, they don't have to cost a lot. But aside from the moral and the nice reasons as to why the employers should be concerned and looking after, cost of living bonus is one that's quite common as well. That is, you know, £750 towards your household bills, for example, or whatever. Aside from the moral obligations as to why, it helps productivity if you have a focus on your mental health and well-being in the workplace. Whichever statistics you look at, mental health issues are on the increase. Now, I don't know whether that's because there's more talk about it, there's more publicity about it, more awareness about it,
or more stress, life stress.
The pandemic. I don't know what it is, but it is on the increase. Okay, and the number of employment tribunal claims related to this area is also on the increase as well.
Wow.
Now,
what sort of examples? Have you got an example, Ami?
Yeah, people are just basically saying, I'm
burning out.
I'm burning out, bullying and harassment, which they perceive because they've got a mental health issue, but which in reality is not as they are perceiving it. And I think it's also important to remember that we're all stressed from time to time. Okay, the HSE defines stress as an adverse reaction people have to excessive pressures or other demands placed on them. Okay, so we will all be stressed from time to time, but there is a big difference between being stressed and having a mental health issue that affords protection under the Equality Act, because in order for that to be the case, for it to be a disability affording protection under the Equality Act, it's got to have a severe and substantial adverse effect on your normal day-to-day activities.
We all have mental health.
Exactly.
We could have good mental health, and it's just how we deal with it, isn't it?
I know, but I'd also say, linking back to our last discussion about flexible working. So if you're putting pressure on people having to work certain hours when they've requested flexible working because they have caring situations at home and stuff like that, there is that can open up a massive can of worms legally.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a woman, Ami will know this, I read it in one of the HR papers, a lot of other people would do it, but someone I think has just been awarded £350,000 for being dismissed for refusal for not being able to work full time, when they knew she'd always been working on a flexible working basis, and then they made the decision that they needed everybody to work full time, and she said, but I've got caring responsibilities, I've always worked flexibly, and they said, well, sorry that you're out then. And she's on £350,000. So,
I think,
that's the important.
We're so excited and they're passionate about this, aren't we?
The important thing to remember that damages for discrimination are unlimited. Okay, so it may cost you more in the long term than dealing with the issues at the outset, and it's about communication. Stating to your staff that this is an area or a topic that we are concerned about, that we want to do stuff with. Awareness, not only amongst your managers to spot issues of burnout, mental health and stress, but also so that employees feel that they are able to go and speak to their manager, and engagement. It shouldn't just be, right, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Ask your staff what can we do to make this workplace better, because if you get buy-in, you're going to get more cooperation, aren't you?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm seeing a lot more wellness employee surveys happening, and I'm sure a number of people here do them as well. And I completely 100% agree with you. I mean, you've got to involve your staff in this. It's all very well sitting here going, I think we should do this, but actually, you know, go out with thoughts. What do you actually want? What will work? But again, going back to what I was saying, 4 generations of staff, you know, 4 generations in your staffing, and they're going to want different things. Right. Yeah. So you're going to have grandparents. They might actually want some you know, there's a whole thing around, and Ami can fill us in, but there's potential grandparent leave coming in, shared leave. And then, you know, you've got people who still have care responsibilities, maybe like my age, where they've got older parents. Then you've got the next group, the millennials, who are kind of parents themselves. And then, of course, you've got the zillennials, who kind of just want that whole, I want to work how I want to work, when I want to work. And, you know, and if you don't let me do that, then I don't want to work for you.
We have a question. It's very relevant to what you were just saying. It's almost probably been answered from Gabriella Hasselby. How would you best support employees suffering from burnout that won't take days off due to workload and can't pass their workload on to others?
I think first and foremost, you need to sit down and have a conversation with that individual, and recognise that it's not healthy what's going on. And then you should suggest that they take some leave. If they don't, you can always force them to take leave under the working time regulations. You give them double the notice of the amount of holiday that you require them to take. Worst case,
depends on the role, I suppose. It depends on what they're doing, their level, why, Gabriella, do they not want to take the time off? Is it because they're feeling I don't know, they don't want to be undermined, they want to control, or because they feel it's a weakness? I think it's getting to the root of the problem is why.
I think she said it's because they can't pass their work on to others. And then I think that comes down to management sitting down and saying,
I wonder if she says can't pass as in can't as in won't, or can't as in is unable to.
Well, I think whichever it is,
okay,
the discussion doesn't there as to why that's not the case, if there is any support, and what's actually critical that can't wait for the next few days or the next week, because
no one's indispensable.
Exactly.
No one's indispensable. And the thing is, if that person, your member of staff, burns out so much that they end up having a mental health episode and needing time off with stress, which then manifests into a physical issue, then what's going to happen then? So I think it's sitting down.
I think the important thing is have a conversation, make sure you've taken a good minutes of that conversation, because you don't want it to come down and bite you on the bum later, and when it looks like the employer's absolutely done nothing to recognise it. Because at least then you can say, look, we tried to do this for you, we tried to do this for you, what more can we actually do? We've got another question in. What if the person is a senior manager? How do we force them to take leave? Well, it's an interesting one, and I don't think whether they're a senior individual or a junior individual, the issue whether they are suffering from stress or about to burn out should be treated any differently, because the employer's still got the same obligations in terms of the duty of care.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And exactly the same thing applies with the working time directive. You just have to give them the notice. And, you know, yes, as Bash said, no one's irreplaceable. But, you know, the other thing, of course, as we all know, is when they literally can't work anymore, what do you do then?
And I think it's important to understand that the reason why we have the working time regulations is so that you have a rest from the workplace for health and safety reasons. Okay. And that's why it's there. Obviously we all take it to go on holidays and whatnot, and that is rest from the workplace. But if the employee isn't doing it, then you can force the employee to take that rest.
Okay. We've got a couple of Gail, you can't put your camera on. This is obviously so relevant for you as well, with work, best places to work, etc. You can't put your camera on, sorry, but hopefully you can hear us. And Jules, your camera's not working, but hopefully you can hear us. Jane, we offer an annual £150 wellbeing allowance for employees. There we go, it's happening, which is great.
Really great.
Which leads us nicely on to the last subject we wanted to talk about, because we could talk about wellbeing in the workplace all day long, but we have another subject we want to talk about, and that is AI. And we have a last poll to give you all. Did you say something, Claire?
I said dun 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 AI. That's all.
AI. Okay. is your company currently using any form of AI in the workplace? Yes, no, yes, no. Be interesting to see I mean, we've seen the list of attendees, haven't we? It's a real mixture of different types of companies and teams, these tour ops, travel agencies, OTAs, and so on. Half and half. Interesting.
That's very interesting.
Okay.
I thought it would be more now, right now, because of the uncertainties, and it's still fairly newish.
I'm going to end that. There we go.
Yeah, I
46,
think
yes.
I think people are, people are getting nervous, aren't they, about AI and how quickly it's adapting. But you know what? We've been using AI for years. You know, every time you ask
Subliminally,
Alexa,
yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah.
People, from a recruitment perspective, I do have some stats. It's a bit like when Total Jobs or LinkedIn came in 20 years ago. That's the end of recruitment agencies. They're never going to be needed again. Or the end of the travel agent, the high street travel agent. It just evolves and adapts. And actually, all these various pieces of technology are there to complement what we do. I've got some stats from Total Jobs, which is a generic job board, but a job board that we at C&M use hugely, both for placing our vacancies and also for their CV database. And we spend a lot of money with them. That's how we find a lot of your candidates out there. The stats are 12% of companies are using AI to screen candidates, 12%. That's across the board, so not just travel, but every company. 11% of companies are using AI to source candidates. So one's to screen, one's to source. 11% of companies are using AI to create job ads. So the job ad is literally that, which I have a real concern over that one. 11% of companies use AI to schedule interviews. Almost 2 in 5 UK businesses use AI tools, which we all do, like I think one of you was saying, we all do, but without even realising. More than 3 in 5 are concerned about AI's use in decision making. This is the interesting one, which I'll then pass over to one of you ladies. 46% think AI will take their job.
Okay.
But 56% think
can I start with that one? Let's start with that one. Gail's just made a really good point in the chat, which is we'll never replace human experience, and that is one of the challenges.
Absolutely.
But you know, I'm fascinated
human
by
opinion and subjective opinion.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fascinated by it, and I'm trying to sort of learn a little bit about it myself. And I have used it as tools for writing things very quickly, and it definitely helps. But you need to be able to check it. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have empathy. It doesn't all those sorts of things. So when you're writing
historical experience with people, because we are in the travel industry, and it's all based on personality and relationships.
Absolutely, but there's no doubt that jobs will change. Not all jobs, but there will be some jobs will change, and new jobs will come out as a result of this. But the other thing I think is really important to know, right, is that we are in the middle of a recruitment crisis. We continue to be in, and a recent report came out that said by 2030. Which is only 6 years away, right? 85 million people, they reckon a global shortage of 85 million people in terms of jobs, right? So there's going to be 85 million jobs, which is half the population of Germany. Now that means that's across the whole board, okay? So, and we know, and as Basha, I've been talking about this for years in terms of what it means to travel, and that the WTT predicted literally 10 odd plus years ago that by 2030 we were going to have 14 million job shortage in the tourism industry globally. So actually AI can be of massive benefit to us. So we need to think about that and how that can actually help us in terms of parts of, and I mean parts of the jobs that we currently use humans to do, but that has to come with great care and it's very early. I think it's important to keep these conversations going. It is very early. My concerns around it are regulation. So we're seeing some regulation coming in overseas. Ami, I'm sure you're hearing a lot more about this. I think businesses need to start really thinking about putting a policy in about use of AI in the workplace. And the reason being for that is there could be proprietary information that people are actually putting into searches that actually they don't realize. Then immediately one of your competitors could go on and do a similar search and get loads of your information on your business that you didn't necessarily want out there. So you need to really start thinking about that. And Ami, I'll let you take over from there because we've had discussions about this.
we have had discussions, and you've touched on a couple of points already, and I'll just delve into those a little bit deeper. Prospect, you may or may not have heard of them. They are a tech union, and they did a survey of 1,000 employers, and 58% of them want some form of government regulation on the use of AI in the workplace, because obviously they want to encourage the commercial benefits of AI, but there is this big concern on the impact on jobs. Some of you may have already seen that the government have produced a white paper on the use of AI to provide some regulatory framework or guidance that sits in tune and side by side existing regulations from the Health and Safety Executive, for example, from the from the Equality and Human Rights Commission. So, and there may be some sector-specific guidance or regulation out there, but it is very much, yes, on the one hand, we recognise the commercial benefits and how it can help employers standardise certain processes. But on the other side, we need tight control. We need employee oversight, ultimately, as tech develops and it continues to evolve, because it is not completely there where we need it to be at this moment in time. And then a few considerations that I thought about. First one, Claire, you've already mentioned about having a clear policy and appropriate use in the workplace, and having a keen oversight on that, and how you measure personal performance if someone's always using AI, for example. How do you appraise them? Is there a good justification and reason for using it? Confidentiality. Again, we need to be mindful of GDPR obligations. So if you are uploading sensitive information, onto an AI platform, is it secure? Where will it end up? Who can use it? And also, what are your guidelines and processes of an employee sharing commercial and sensitive and confidential information on those platforms? You also need to do not only risk assessments in terms of GDPR breaches, but also intellectual property. If your company owns intellectual property and your staff are just putting it up and out there, is that going to end well? Obviously, we recognise that some HR processes are becoming quite automated. Recruitment basher, you've already spoken about, okay? But that doesn't.
I do think the travel industry and recruitment in travel, we are quite archaic and always a little bit backward in anything, especially in the travel recruitment sector, be it adopting new technology. And I don't know if you ladies agree with that it is going to take a while for AI to really get into the belly of our industry.
I think that's ultimately because the travel industry is a people business, isn't it? It's
because we're people business.
Because we're people business, yeah. But in terms of if you are using it for recruitment, you just got to be careful that when you're setting up the questions, there's no unconscious bias there that could lead to potential discrimination type claims. Also, if you're using AI in redundancy processes, you've got to have objective questions being asked. So there could be data bias by the language it's used by the person who's creating subject or content for that redundancy process. And also in terms of performance management, don't solely rely on AI, have some input from a suitable individual that can, add to the information that you've got from AI. Just don't rely on that one source. So yes, it's there, but I agree with Gail. I don't think it's ever going to overtake employees.
Absolutely not. I think in a way it will help. You've talked about obviously unconscious bias, and that relates hugely to D&I, doesn't it? And we sat on the committee, the ATO DEI committee. I also think it could be a positive as well, as long as it is. I mean, I'm not an expert, so I'm learning everything you're saying. Claire, have you got anything else to add to this?
No, I just kind of slightly reiterate what I said before, I think, and to pick up on what Ami was saying, I think this is a new thing. It's, remember, it only became a big thing when the kind of ChatGPT suddenly took off in kind of earlier this year, and everyone became really aware of it without kind of, as I said, thinking about the fact that we've been using Google Meet and Alexa and all that sort of stuff for a long time. And chatbots obviously are a big thing that a lot of businesses have taken in. So it can help with the customer journeys and the UX experience. experience, but it doesn't mean that we have to wait for things to evolve. And so Ami was talking about the need to get these policies in. We all review our policies to make sure they're still fit for purpose on a regular basis. But I do think it's really critical for companies to come in now. So even though we as a company may be not adopting it, you don't necessarily know if you get these sort of young bright sparks coming in, or just bright sparks, full stop, you know, who want to start using AI in the workplace. And if there's not,
you don't have to be young to be bright.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I was being ageist, so I apologize, but yeah, so you know, that I think there is that. I mean, I read a really amusing article a couple of weeks ago actually saying the chances are is that AI is going to get more stupid as more human interaction happens with it, because we will dumb it down. But
I was going to add to that about you know, is it going to take over jobs? Exactly what Gail's left us now. She has to go to a meeting, but is it going to take over jobs? No, because there still has to be loads of people behind the scenes to put this AI in.
One of the areas in the travel tech world, and we all know Simon Powell well from Inspire, and I had a really interesting conversation with him back in June about this, and he said, you know, things like coding is being taken over already by AI, but it still needs a coder to come in and check it. So you know, there's all, as I said, I think jobs will evolve, jobs will change. The human face-to-face interaction will still be needed, but there'll be an improvement in it. It'll refine the way we do things, and I do think this could be a really positive thing. We have to embrace it. We have to make sure we're protecting our businesses. We're protecting, as Ami said, our intellectual property, our proprietary information, and the confidentiality. GDPR is a big thing on this. So you need to introduce policies sooner rather than later, because it's only going to grow, right? It's not like a flash in the pan. This isn't something that's, you know, like the fax machine. It will continue to be used and to grow, and we'll have new things, new ways of using it coming in, you know, but things are developing all the time. You know, Google Bard they're improving that because they want to be better than ChatGPT, and you're always getting new players coming into the market. So just I think we can't ignore it, but we have
from a recruitment perspective, the roles, even non-AI related roles, but tech roles, the roles that we're working on now in 2023 are very different to the types of roles that we're working on when we launched the business in 1998. They've evolved, you know, so it's going to be the same. That there will still be lots of different types of roles, and they will evolve as AI and the technology involved with AI it's kind of gets into the business, into the belly of the business, so to speak.
It's a good point. I think there will be some job losses, but nowhere near the scale of what people, you know, these horror stories. I think
I agree.
It was some jobs replaced by different types of jobs, and so as AI develops, you know, I'm not a tech person at all, but you know, it'll be different.
You tell guys that we're not very techie, but I think it's probably better because we're not techie and we're just talking about it normally.
Yeah, there'll be new types of jobs that evolve that never even existed a couple of years ago.
Exactly. Okay, anything else on AI, my esteemed panel? No. Are there any questions from the audience? No. Okay, well, I think that almost brings us to a close, which is nice. But before we do, I'd like your predictions, really, for Q4 and 2024 from an travel HR, travel law, and then I'll give a travel recruitment prediction as well.
I think it would be good just to understand more.
We have got a question. Good.
Yeah, sorry. On the current market, from ourselves when we were sourcing like travel consultants, I think maybe kind of after the pandemic, there was obviously people resigning and leaving, obviously, the travel industry, and then there was that bit of influx. However, that created challenges within organizations and them having to source maybe kind of further afield, and you know, create further kind of hybrid working, remote working as well, so they could actually source candidates from different locations. Is that still very much the case? You know, probably in particular the Aberdeen market as well, is that very tight? So maybe keen to understand it maybe in terms of the location and how the current market actually is.
There's definitely candidate shortage. Yes, there is, because there is more flexibility, more hybrid workingly, and even more remote working. What that has done is that has opened up the pool of candidates to a wider geographical area for your search. So if before you be it Bristol, Aberdeen, London, Leeds, wherever, you wanted your staff to be in the office 25 days a week, whereas now it could be 80-20, 60-40, or fully remote, that does open the can of the pool of candidates that are being searched on. There is a lack. There is still a lack of talent. So obviously our job as an industry is to ensure that we are not just attracting but retaining the people, and we've talked about this all the time, but people are coming back into the sector. But yes, there is still a lack, and it's as we said at the beginning of the session, is ensuring that you are employer brand, that you have great. It's not just about salary, but fantastic well-being policies, benefits, culture, etc. That is what staff are looking for. And you know, if they don't necessarily have exactly the 10 prerequisites that you are looking for, and the GDS and the 8 years of business travel, whatever experience, tour operating experience, that's okay, because they might have some soft skills which far outweigh, and you can teach the harder skills. I totally appreciate sometimes it's difficult because you need them to hit the ground running, especially if it's a tough business travel account, or they need specific location experience for a product role. But it's just about not lowering our standards, but broadening our requirements somewhat. So hope that answered it in a roundabout way.
Yeah, it did. Probably just to kind of add on to that, do you feel that that's increased the rise of salary as well slightly? And
because obviously Aberdeen's a bit different, but yeah. Because we at C&M, for example, good example, we had a team in London, Reigate, Manchester that were based in the offices that looked after that remit of the surrounding area of clients. Whereas actually now my team, they all work from home in different locations and they work on different clients. Yes, they still have a sort of an affinity towards their location because they know the area, they might know more candidates. However, there might be a company in Manchester, they might recruit somebody in Brighton based from home, and that does impact the salaries. Yes. So where there used to be a bit of a disparity between salaries in the north and the south, that the gap is closing.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. We did have another it wasn't anonymous, but I don't, in case she doesn't want her name being mentioned. Salary bandings, benchmarking. I'm not sure. Salary bandings, obviously we do our monthly salary surveys as well. Salaries are beginning, as I said, they are beginning to increase. We are still, however, getting salaries for roles, and I'm talking, be lower than the lower of end of the scale. We're talking 23,000 for not even entry level, which as your recruiters or the agency you use or your in-house recruiters will tell you, if the people candidates are just not going to go for those kind of salaries, and you do need to relook at your packages and your benefits and so on, because they're just and it's the candidates that are being offered at the highest salaries that are obviously going to go for roles, as well as all the other benefits. And career development plans, that's another question that this individual asked. Yeah, career development plans, I think Claire, you might be good to answer this because you work with lots of different companies, and I know that some smaller companies probably don't have the time or the resource or the funds to put a really structured career development plan in place. Others do. You might want to employ somebody that wants to come and work for you, and they really want to know what their plan is. Whereas if you only got 15 people in the business, they might not do. I think from my perspective, I think it just depends on the individual. Some people
it has to be individual. It's down to communication. It's down to understanding what each individual wants. What I would say, and sort of going slightly back to Lee's question, I think, and to answer also the final question, I think what we're going to see is a lot of people which is great for the work I do with Future and everything, is this creating future pipelines of talent, looking at actually not what you always recruited, but thinking about recruiting to build for the future. So getting an apprentice, getting young people in, college leavers, university graduates. You don't have to have a graduate scheme to employ a graduate. What you have to be able to do, though, is give them the kind of graduate experience they want. So an opportunity to look and work within the business, which sometimes actually can be quite a good thing if you're in a smaller business, because you can really get involved in the whole thing at a much more kind of in-depth experience. So I think that's the main thing. Learning and development is absolutely key. It comes out within the top 5 365 every time of what staff want, along with flexible working we've already talked about, wellbeing policies, sustainability practices, and all that sort of stuff, and DEI as well. And I mentioned it earlier, and I keep going on about it, but I think this hidden talent, we are missing a trick if we're not looking for underrepresented employee groups. So particularly in areas where you are struggling to get staff, it may be that, you know, you just get into your local colleges, or you can find sort of some of those underrepresented groups. If you are good at offering working, you might find there's a whole range of mums out there who might have had careers and find are really struggling to find a job that suits them, that they can do a few hours a week doing. You know, there's all these types of people out there, and if we can get those people with disabilities, you know, we haven't even, that's a whole other webinar I'm sure we'll get into in the future, but you know, not just physical disabilities, but of course there's the neuro disabilities, which is again a massive growth area, and we need to be doing more on. You know, they say that every single person is somewhere on the scale, and I think that we as businesses, again, I keep saying missing a trick, but we are missing a trick if we don't go out and start thinking differently about the types of people we recruit, because there are some really great hidden talent out there that we wouldn't necessarily consider. But in order to get to them, we have to completely rethink our own branding and what we look like, and be a more welcoming, inclusive industry. And I say this is one of my favorite things, but the staff you've got are the best ambassadors you have for your business. Not just the staff you currently have, but every single member of staff who's ever worked for you is an ambassador for your business. So utilize that as well, and they will help you in terms of that journey and your employee branding.
Totally agree with that. And if you do the same old things, you're going to get the same results in the way you recruit staff and attract talent. Anything to add to that, Ami?
No, I think that's a very good summary from Claire.
Absolutely. So I mean, my prediction, I think we're going to carry on doing as we're doing for the rest of this year. Usually Q4 is quite busy in recruitment, and because obviously post-summer, pre-Christmas, so it's going to continue to be candidate driven, lots of jobs out there. But I do think that the gap is shortening somewhat. 2024, who knows, crystal ball. If I knew exactly what was going to happen, I'd be a very rich young lady, but I think it will probably continue as it is. Obviously, we work with a lot of cruise lines. They're continuing to recruit, cruise retailers, the TMCs. I do think we'll probably start to pick up on the recruitment front as well. And yeah, we as a recruitment business, we are investing in a lot of technology and advertising and so on, but also recruitment midware technology to enable us to find the people, the talent for all of you out there. Yes, we have our network. Yes, we have our points of contact, our database and so on, but we are doing everything in our power to make sure that the quality of the talent and the speed of service is out there for you. So that's my summarizing, is that the right word, of what's going to happen. So ladies and gentlemen, would like to thank you all for attending today. We will be doing regular series of these, and if there's anybody that has any specific subjects that they'd like us to hone in on and talk about in more depth, or in fact would like to join us on maybe a round table or some kind of fireside chat, we'd love to have you on board. There's so many things we could talk about. One thing we didn't even talk about, ladies, which we did touch on when we caught up, was alcohol in the travel industry. We touched on that, didn't we? And that the well-being. So would love to do a session on that. But there's so many other things we could talk about, D&I. And so please, Owen will follow up, and my marketing ops manager will follow up and send an email out to you all. And if there's any subjects you'd like us to cover, we will obviously cover them. We hope that you found it thought-provoking, interesting, informative. And of course, I'd like to thank Ami and Claire for your incredible time, and as ever your knowledge and your expertise in your subject matters, because I couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much, ladies, and thank you.
Pleasure as always.
Should we stay on?